All right, folks, hello again. I am just leaving the jewelers and I had a look around at some watches, which was fun. Really nice guy, chatted with him for a while about various things. He recognized the Blackbird. He said, oh, that's a Blackbird, that's an old one. And yeah, so they had a nice selection of, they had anything from, Raymond Weil, Baume Mercier, Tag Heuer, Breitling, Omega, Chopard. They didn't have Rolex. I'm not sure why. I didn't ask. I didn't care. Actually, I did want to look at some of the Rolexes too. So I wanted to share a few impressions of what I looked at. I'll try to remember. I should have jotted down notes or something like that. They had like the Movado and the Rado, and those are really tier 3 brands, and I just wasn't impressed at all. They just didn't do anything for me. Now that's partially the designs. I think I've mentioned this before, but one thing I've noticed is when you go to a watch shop, the watches look a lot more sparkly and shiny and almost too much than they do on the internet, or especially if you're looking at used watches. I think I prefer a more matte or brushed look to my metal. I'm not really a huge fan of the high polish type look. Raymond Weil, they didn't do anything for me. I didn't see any that drew me in. Baume Mercier, however, they had a few watches. I wish I could remember which ones, but I was actually kind of impressed. I thought that they had some nice pieces. There were some chronographs that were very, I don't know. There's an attention to detail and a fineness of design that you start seeing around the tier 4 level. And I was really, I don't know, I was a little surprised that I liked them. I'd always considered Baume Mercier not even really under consideration, but I'm going to look a little closer at their watches. Longines, they were okay. They nothing really drew me in. Tag Heuer, I've gone back and forth looking at the Aqua Racer. Of all the Tag Heuers that I've seen, at least the ones that they're currently making, the Aqua Racer has been my favorite. And I actually usually I prefer the chronograph version, but I think I preferred the non-chrono. Just has a nice look to it. I don't know if I would get it. It's sort of similar to the Longines Hydro Conquest as far as like a dive watch that I would enjoy owning, but I don't know if I'd actually buy it. So which brings me to the big two, Breitling and Omega. And as much as I love my Breitlings, I feel like Breitling as a line is just too glossy. They're too polished. I wish they made more brushed watches. Of all the ones, I saw some Super Avengers, which are huge. They're like 48 millimeters or something like that. But of all of the Breitlings that I saw, the one that impressed me the most was the newer Navitimer with a blue dial and the blue chrono inserts. I love that watch. It was high polish and it had this beautiful bracelet, and maybe later when I upload this video I'll find some pictures and put it at the end so people can refer to the watches that I have been talking about. I don't know if I can cut this or not. But yeah, I loved the Breitling Navitimer. It was big. I think it's about, I don't know if that's 46 millimeters or not. I didn't try that on. I did try on a few Omegas, and so this is sort of the main course of this video, is because I spent the most time looking at the Omegas, because as everyone knows that watches this channel, Omega's my favorite brand. And it actually isn't particularly close. There's no other brand that's anywhere near Omega. So first of all, I looked at the Speedmasters, and I have to say I'm a little underwhelmed by the Moonwatch. I was kind of almost a little disappointed that I didn't feel that special something that some people feel with the Moonwatches. Now, this is not to bag on the Moonwatch at all. I think it's a great watch. But it just doesn't quite grab me. I think a lot of it has to do with the subdials. I find to be a little bit boring. I mean, it was interesting. I probably have to spend more time with it and really see. But the Speedmaster that I love the most, and unfortunately it's well out of my price range, is the Dark Side of the Moon. I absolutely love that watch. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful watch. Not 100% crazy about the strap, but you know, it's just a beauty. It really is a beauty. I did not try that on. He was more offering of the other watches. I don't know if he did. Maybe that's too expensive. Really nice guy though. He was very. He probably knew I wasn't there to buy. Although, I think it's important if you go into a place like that is to wear a nice watch versus a cheapo, so that they know you're at least a potential customer. So the constellations are really weird, and the DeVille. But the Constellation, he was telling me that, and I think I knew this, that it's big in Asia. It's Omega's #1 watch in Asia is the Constellation. They're not very popular here. They're pretty dressy, pretty unusual. They look kind of retro, actually. And then the Aquaterra. I have to say, the Aquaterra is gradually but consistently growing on me. In particular, the blue dial. Now they have one that was a little bit big, but I really liked it. I think it's 44 millimeters. It's the blue dial GMT Aquaterra. Totally gorgeous watch. The color on the Aquaterra is really, really gorgeous. It's not quite as brilliant as the Seamaster Electric Blue, but it's equally beautiful. In a way, it's like slightly subtler, so it's almost more beautiful. So I could see eventually getting an Aquaterra, blue dial Aquaterra. That would be a good dress watch option. Although, to be honest, I just recently ran across a Orient dress watch with blue dial that blew me away, which is probably a fifth the price. So that's something to consider in the future. Oh yeah, so then I looked at the Seamaster 300s. I particularly wanted to look at the black dial chronograph. I did really like it. It was beautiful. It's same dimensions. There's actually a slightly larger one, but it's the same dimensions as my chrono Seamaster. It didn't necessarily blow me away, but I did really, really like it, and that's definitely one of my top wish list watches. And then finally the Planet Oceans. And well, there's two things that struck me. One is I was a bit underwhelmed with the 42 millimeter non-chrono Planet Ocean. This watch I wasn't that into, and then I got really into it, and I almost considered getting one, and then I backed away, and then taking another look at it, it just doesn't do it for me. I gotta say, I prefer the Seamasters. The Planet Ocean has some really nice qualities to it, but the watch of the Planet Ocean that I really like is the chronograph, the bi-compacts. And I tried that. I actually tried one on, and I'd always, that used to be my grail watch, my #1 piece in the world. And then I decided that 45 millimeter watches were too big for me, and plus it's super thick. So I backed away from that. And then trying it on, I was actually surprised at that it was heavy, but not ridiculous. I was expecting it to be like super heavy. It was totally comfortable to wear. And B, I actually could pull one of those off. It was big, but it wasn't, Invicta big. It was Orient Saturation Diver big. It was Hamilton Railroad big. So that might be back on my list for an eventual quote-unquote Grail watch. I do wish it was a little smaller, even just a millimeter less wide and maybe 2 millimeters less thick. But it's just a cool watch. It has, the movement is gorgeous. The display back is just so awesome. It's really an incredible piece. Unfortunately, they didn't have the blue one there, and I prefer the blue, and I think I even prefer the liquid metal, which is even more expensive. But unfortunately, the blue is more expensive, and the chronograph used, they seem to go for around 4.5, which is still beyond what I'm willing to muster the funds for. So it might be something to get down the line. So yeah, oh yeah, I looked at Chopard briefly. They did nothing for me, so I kind of passed that by. So yeah, that was my journey through the jewelry store. It was, yeah. I think the main takeaways for me are A, I liked Baume Mercier more than I thought. B, I like Breitling a lot, but a lot of their watches are a little bit too gaudy and garish and too highly polished, but the Navitimers, particularly the blue ones, are really something I want to look to in the future. And C, Omega Moonwatch didn't do it for me. But the Aquaterra did, and the Planet Ocean chronograph is something that I will consider again for the future. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Various things. He recognized the Blackbird. He said, oh, that's a Blackbird. That's an old one. And yeah, so you know, they had a nice selection of, I mean, they had anything from, you know, Raymond Weil, Baume Mercier. All right, folks, hello again. I am just leaving the jewelers, and I had a look around at some watches, which was fun. Really nice guy. Chatted with him for a while about BA, Tag Heuer, Breitling, Omega, Chopard. They didn't have Rolex. I'm not sure why. I didn't ask. I didn't care. Actually, I did want to look at some of the Rolexes too. So I wanted to share a few impressions of what I looked at. You know, just I'll try to remember. I should have jotted down notes or something like that. You know, they had like the Movado and the Rado, and you know, those are really tier 3 brands, and I just wasn't impressed at all. They just didn't do anything for me. Now that's partially the designs. I think I've mentioned this before, but one thing I've noticed is when you go to a watch shop, the watches